More seconds for the mood in the room to shift. I'm feeling it. There it is. Okay. Questions? We have done such an awesome job. Thank you, Garrett.
So I know I probably should know this because I've been around for a little while.
Yes.
But what is the vineyard again?
Yes.
If I hear the word denomination,
yes.
How do I interact with that?
Yes. Vineyard is a denomination, although it's a new kind of denomination. It's only been in existence since the mid-1980s. There are about 550 vineyard churches in the United States. There's a national board that kind of oversees the vineyard. Nancy and I have served on the national board. We're finishing that up this year. We're broken down into regions. So we're in the Great Lakes region and areas. We're in the southeast Michigan area with other vineyard churches. Vineyard is mostly a relationship network for senior pastors, actually. That's how the linkages happen organizationally, is through the senior pastors. It's a way of caring for and kind of tending the senior pastors. And each local church is pretty much autonomous. The vineyard owns the rights to the name. So the name is trademarked. So if a local church really goes off the deep end, or pastors, taking money and or running off with the church secretary and it's not his spouse, then Vineyard will come in and if the local church is not willing to sort that out and deal with it, and it's a significant enough issue, Vineyard can take the name away from the church. So that's kind of how in a sense, the power works down the line. It's a very it's an ingenious approach to church discipline, actually, because it's very, very simple. So that's the Vineyard. And I think most of you do at our newcomers dinners or lunches, we show the video of that shows John Wimber, one of the founding leaders of the Vineyard, talking about kind of the early days. It came out of the Jesus movement in the late 1960s and 70s. Vineyard kind of emerged in the mid-80s, mainly in Southern California. But now it's around the United States. And there are vineyard churches all over the world now. So I think there's about, 800 vineyard churches outside the United States. UK, Australia, South Africa, all over the place. So,
just a quick follow-up to that. Mm-hmm. Are vineyard churches franchises, meaning that every vineyard church is going to have the same experience?
Right. Vineyard churches are not franchises in the sense that, if you went into McDonald's, it'd be pretty much the same menu everywhere. We're more united by a set of core values. And our core values are like experiencing God, compassionate ministry, intimate worship, reconciling community, and one other thing that we would.
Which you helped write.
I helped write the core. Oh, that's embarrassing. No, that didn't have to come out.
I'm sorry.
No, just kidding. No, that's quite fine. I'm not actually. I may be blushing, but I'm sure I'm not embarrassed. Right, so in most vineyard churches, you'd see small groups, you'd see a concern for some real ministry to the poor happening, you'd probably have contemporary worship, they'd probably be younger than a lot of other churches in town and have a higher percentage of people who didn't come from a church background, but you might not like if you like our church, it doesn't mean you're going to like every vineyard church, but it's a very diverse movement, theologically and culturally and in many other ways, and that's kind of the fun of Vineyard.
The fifth one was the culturally relevant ministry.
Culturally relevant ministry, yes.
Would you consider this Vineyard Church to be more of a traditional Christian theology or more liberal Christian theology?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's one of my hobby horse questions, so I get to answer it.
Yeah.
So the term conservative and liberal is a very common term in the church world. It's a political term, primarily, conservative and liberal, but at least in the United States these days, it's become kind of a theological term. And so people who are conservative Christians don't like liberal Christians, and people who are liberal Christians don't like conservative Christians. And I like to think of that conservative liberal category as essentially a category error when it comes to Christianity. Because if you actually look at like what conservatives are for and what liberals are for, and like what the Bible teaches and what the Jesus tradition is, you find aspects of each in liberal and conservative, and that would be even true when it's used theologically. So I think it's become kind of an unhelpful shorthand, so that people who identify as conservative Christians, if anything is liberal, they don't like it, and vice versa. So when we first started teaching about the poor in the church, not what the Bible teaches about the poor, we had people who identified as conservative Christians who said, "Oh, that sounds liberal to me. That can't be good." And that tells me that we're having category error happening. So having said that, it is a category that kind of is used in the culture, and probably because we're in Ann Arbor, I think we would have more of a reputation within Vineyard as maybe leaning more toward the progressive end of the thing. Partly because we're in Ann Arbor, we have more people who are politically Democratic than you would have in a Vineyard church that was in Alabama, for example, or in the Bible Belt or whatever. But we're actually quite a diverse church in terms of politics and in terms of theology. So that wasn't a real
non-answer.
It's a non-answer, and it's because I refuse to be pigeonholed into those two categories. And if I said conservative, it would be wrong, and if I said liberal, it would be wrong.
And honestly, we're probably about 50-50 in the church in terms of makeup, and I think one of the cool things about the church is that we coexist together in that with Jesus as the
Yes,
center.
we've got this as our core, and then we agree to disagree on so many different things. I thought Emily did a great job with her sermon where she talked about all the different doctrinal things where there's 2 or 3 different options, and she listed, I think, 17 different things. And if you actually go through all the various options, it turns into
5 million.
5 million different iterations. So there are many, many important doctrinal issues that are really, significant in the church world that are not part of a common view, is not part of our common core in this church. That's one of the most significant differences in terms of the Ann Arbor Vineyard and other churches.
Yes.
And that's the most confusing thing for people, because sometimes people identify clarity about all those different issues as that's earnestness and seriousness about Christianity. And people who don't share all those things in common aren't really serious about their faith, but we think, no, that's not the way to think about it. We want to really emphasize what C.S. Lewis called mere Christianity, or the core tenets of Christianity as outlined in the Apostles and Nicene Creed. So it's not anything goes kind of Christianity. It's rooted in the history of the church, and especially the Nicene and Apostles Creed. But many other issues we basically agree to disagree. People have personal opinions, and I have leanings on this issue or that issue, but we don't. That's not what draws us together as a church community.
Can I comment on that too?
Uh-huh.
So one of the things that's worth recognizing as you're contemplating joining this community is that it will be an agreement to live with some tension.
Yes.
We are not a church that is going to say everything that we do we're all going to agree about, or everything that we feel we're all going to agree about. But that's for me, one of the most beautiful things that God is doing here, is He's actually letting men and women, brothers and sisters in Jesus, not have to think and feel all the same things, but still follow Him together and accomplish the mission that He's asking us to accomplish together.
Right.
So it is, you're not going to always feel comfortable here. I'm just warning you. This
Yep.
is truth and advertising.
Yeah.
But hopefully
Yes.
we all feel purposeful, like we join in with God's purpose
Yes.
and live with that dynamic tension.
So we like to call it dynamic tension. So it's dynamic. It leads to growth. It stretches us. It's actually a healthy and a good thing, but it's real. It's real tension. Yeah. And Vineyard has that as a movement too. So
Yes.
like we're like a science friend. I'm a science-friendly guy, and I've taught on, theistic evolution is fine for Christians to believe in the environment. And you might have Vineyard churches in the Bible Belt or the South where, they're all, have a different perspective on those things. So they might say, oh, that Ken up there in Ann Arbor, he's super liberal, But I think it's conservative because it's conservation.